Oh, actually. So let's see. Does my Butts Theater button work? It does. Let's go. Perfect. Buttsterpiece Theater. I love this. All right. Let's see. Where did we leave off? We left off on page 16 of how many hundreds of pages? 726. This was such a great idea. Alex, oh my gosh. Alex, what a great time. What a great time for you to pop in. Holy crap. I don't think Alex has been to one of these Buttsterpiece theaters before. Hi, Adi. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing fantastic. This is the part of like the stream that I do sometimes that I read from a bookaroo. Hello, I'm new here. Okay, Tozu, welcome. First of all, welcome. I hope you're having a great night. Make sure you read the rules. And no, I haven't been hard catching streams lately. Okay, so Alex, basically how this goes is I read for about 20 or 30 minutes, and I'm trying to do this enough times to not only get through this giant thick book, but like I want like a giant playlist of just book reading and stuff like that. So folks like that enjoy my voice and stuff can have like, you know, like hours of stuff to listen to, like, you know, while they're trying to like go to bed or rest or just like, you know, decompress and all that. I'm so new. Audiobooks by Adi. They're audiobooks. Get it? Oh. You have a raging. I have such a raging clue right now. All right. So I'm gonna read now. He sat in silence as the conversation between his father and the stranger lengthened from polite comments on the mildness of the weather to a more intimate discussion of the people and happenings of the Vale. Flick noticed that his father, who never needed much encouragement anyway, was carrying the entire conversation with only casual questions interjected by the other man. It probably did not matter, but the Olmsfords knew nothing about the stranger. He had not even told them his name. Now, he was quite subtly drawing out information on the Vale from the unsuspecting innkeeper. The whole situation bothered Flick, but he was uncertain what he should do. He began to wish that Shay would appear and see what was happening, but his brother remained absent, and the long-awaited dinner was served and entirely consumed before one of the wide double doors at the front of the lobby swung open, and Shay appeared from out of the darkness. For the first time, Flick saw the hooded stranger take more than a passing interest in someone. Strong hands gripped the table as the black figure rose silently, towering over the Olmsfords. He seemed to have forgotten they were there, as the lined brow furrowed more deeply and the craggy features radiated as intense concentration. For one frightening second, Flick believed that the stranger was somehow about to destroy Shay, but then the idea disappeared and was replaced with another. The man was searching his brother's mind. He stared intently at Shay, his deep, shaded eyes running quickly over the young man's slim countenance and slight build. He noted the telltale elven features immediately. The hint of slightly pointed ears beneath the tousled blonde hair. The pencil-like eyebrows that ran straight up at a sharp angle from the bridge of the nose rather than across the brow. from the slimness of the nose and jaw. He saw intelligence and honesty in that face, and now, as he faced Shay across the room, he saw determination in the penetrating blue eyes. Determination that spread in a flush over the youthful features as the two men locked their gazes on one another. Did Twitch goof? Oh, Scythe. Scythe, thank you so much for the heckin' raid. Thank you so much for the raid. Scythe, we're gonna be wrapping up pretty soon, but I'm reading The Sword of Shannara. Sometimes. This is kind of an early night. It's impossible to tell without audio. Oh, I see. Let's see. For a moment, Shay hesitated in awe of the huge dark apparition across the room. He felt inexplicably trapped, but bracing himself with sudden resolve, he walked toward the forbidding figure. Let's see. Let me give you a shout out real quick. Sounds like you had a good night, Scythe. Yeah, I feel you early night. I beat a crazed jaguar and a water elephant. Holy heck. Wow, why didn't it? Oh, there it shouts out. Okay. Master of Chaos, thank you so much for the follow. Thank you so much. So basically, like, you know, what we do from time to time is I read a little bit from a book, so folks can kind of, like, you know, de-stress and kind of chill out from like a really ridiculous day or whatever. But yeah, I'm trying to, like, amass, like, a playlist of stuff. So, like, if anybody wanted to at any given time want to listen to, like, a little bit of story reading while they were trying to, like, go to bed or something like that, they can do that. Flick and his father watched Shay approach them, his eyes still on the tall stranger, and then, as if suddenly realizing who he was, the two rose from the table. There was a moment of awkward silence as they faced one another, and then all the Olmsfords began greeting each other at once in a sudden jumble of words that relieved the initial tension. Shay smiled at Flick, but could not take his eyes off the imposing figure before him. Shay was slightly shorter than his brother, and was therefore even more in the shadow of the stranger than Flick had been, though he was less nervous about it as he faced the man. Curzod Olmsford was talking to him about his errand, and his attention was momentarily diverted while he replied to his father's insistent questions. After a few preliminary remarks, Shay turned back to the newcomer to the Vale. I don't believe we've met. Yet you seem to know me from somewhere, and I have the strangest feeling that I should know you. The dark face above him nodded as the familiar mocking smile crossed it fleetingly. Perhaps you should know me, though it is not surprising that you do not remember. But I know who you are, indeed. I know you well. Shay was dumbfounded at their reply and, unable to respond, stood staring at the stranger. The other raised a lean hand to his chin to stroke the small dark beard, glancing slowly around at the three men who waited for him to continue. Flick's open mouth was framing the question on the minds of all the Olmsfords, when the stranger reached up and pulled back the cowl of his cloak to reveal clearly the dark face, now framed by long black hair. cut nearly shoulder length and shading the deep-set eyes, which still showed only as black slits in the shadows beneath the heavy brows. "My name is Alanon," he announced quietly. There was a long moment of stunned silence as the three listeners stared in speechless amazement. Alanon, the mysterious wanderer of the four lands, historian of the races, philosopher and teacher, and, some said, practitioner of the mystic arts. Alanon, the man who had been everywhere from the darkest havens of the Aenar to the forbidden heights of the Charnel Mountains. His was a name familiar to the people of even the most isolated Southland communities. Now he stood unexpectedly before the Elmsfords, none of whom had ventured outside their valley home more than a handful of times in their lives. Alanon smiled warmly for the first time, but inwardly he felt pity for them. The quiet existence they had known for so many years was finished, and in a way, it was his responsibility. "What brings you here?" Shay asked at last. The tall man looked sharply at him and uttered a deep, low chuckle that caught them all by surprise. "You, Shay," he murmured. "I came looking for you." Shay was awake early the next morning, rising from the warmth of his bed to dress hastily in the damp cold of the morning air. He had arisen so early, he discovered, that no one else in the entire inn, guest or family, was yet awake. The long building was silent as he moved quietly from his small room in the rear of the main section of the large lobby, where he quickly started a fire in the great stone hearth. His fingers almost numb with cold. The valley was always strikingly cold in the early morning hours before the sun reached the rim of the hills, even during the warmest seasons of the year. Shady Vale was well sheltered, not only from the eyes of men, but from the fury of perverse weather conditions that drifted down from the Northland. Yet while heavy storms of the winter and spring passed over the valley and Shady Vale, the bitter cold of early morning all year round settled into the high hills, holding until the warmth of the noonday sun filtered down to chase away the chill. The fire crackled and snapped at the wood as Shay relaxed in one of the high, straight-backed chairs and pondered the events of the previous evening. He leaned back, folded his arms for warmth, and hunched down into the hardwood. How could Alanon have known him? He had seldom been out of the Vale, and would certainly have remembered the other man if he had met him while on one of his infrequent journeys. Alanon had refused to say more on the subject after that one declaration. He had finished his dinner in silence, concluding that further talk should wait until the next morning. And he became once again the forbidden figure he had first appeared when Shay entered the inn that evening. His meal completed, he had asked to be shown to his room so that he might sleep, and then excused himself. Neither Shay nor Flick could get him to say one word further without the trip to Shady Vale and his interest in Shay. The two brothers had talked alone later that night, and Flick had related the story of his encounter with Alanon and the incident with the terrifying shadow. Shay's thoughts drifted back to his initial question. How could Alanon have known him? Mentally, he retraced the events of his life. His early years were a vague memory. He did not know where he had been born, although sometime after the Elmsfords had adopted him, he had been told that his place of birth was a small Westland community. His father had died before he was old enough to form a lasting impression, and now he could recall almost nothing of him. For a time, his mother had kept him, and he could recall bits and pieces of his years with her, playing with elven children, surrounded by great trees and deep green solitude. He was 5 when she became suddenly ill and decided to return to her own people in the hamlet of Shady Vale. She must have known then that she was dying. But her first concern was for her son. The journey south was the finish for her, and she died shortly after they reached the valley. Relatives his mother had left when she married were gone, all but the Ohmsfords, who were no more than distant cousins. Curzod Ohmsford had lost his wife less than a year earlier, and was raising his son Flick while he managed the inn. Shay became a part of their family, and the two boys had grown up as brothers, both bearing the name Ohmsford. Shay had never been told his true name, nor did he care to ask. The Ohmsfords were the only family that meant anything to him, and they had accepted him as their own. There were times that being a half-blood bothered him, but Flick had stoutly insisted that it was a distinct advantage because it gave him the instincts and character of two races to build upon. Yet nowhere could he remember an encounter with Elanon. It was as if the event had never really occurred. Perhaps it never had. He shifted around in the chair and gazed absently at the fire. There was something about the grim wanderer that frightened him. Perhaps it was his imagination. But he could not shake off the feeling that the man could somehow read his thoughts. Could see right through him whenever he chose to do so. It seemed ridiculous, but the thought that had lingered with the Valemans since the meeting in the lobby of the inn. Flick had remarked on it too, and he had gone further than that, whispering in the darkness of their sleeping room to his brother, fearful that he might in some way be overheard, that he felt Elanon was dangerous. Shay stretched himself and sighed deeply. Already it was becoming light outside. He rose to add some more wood to the fire and heard the sound of his father's voice in the hallway, grumbling loudly about matters in general, sighing in resignation. Shay put aside his thoughts and hastened to the kitchen to help with the morning preparations. It was almost noon before Shay saw any sign of Elanon, who had evidently kept to his room for the duration of the morning. He appeared quite suddenly from around one corner of the inn, as Shay relaxed beneath a huge shade tree at the rear of the building, absently munching on a quick luncheon he had prepared for himself. His father was occupied within, and Flick was off somewhere on an errand. The dark stranger of the previous night seemed no less forbidding in the noon sun, still a shadowed figure of tremendous height, though he appeared to have changed his cloak from black to a light gray. The lean face was slightly bowed to the path before him as he walked towards Shay and seated himself on the grass next to the Valeman, gazing absently at the hilltops to the east which appeared above the trees of the hamlet. Both men were silent for several long minutes until at last Shay could stand it no longer. "Why did you come to the Vale, Elanon? Why were you looking for me?" The dark face turned toward him. The slight smile played across the lean features. "A question, my young friend, that cannot be as easily answered as you would like. Perhaps the best way in which to answer you is first to question you. Have you read anything of the history of the Northland?" He paused. "Do you know of the Skull Kingdom?" Shay stiffened at the mention of the name, a name that was synonymous with all the terrible things in life, real and imagined. A name used to frighten little children who had been bad or to send shivers down the spines of grown men when stories were told before the dying coals of a late evening fire. It was a name that hinted of ghosts and goblins, of the sly forest gnomes of the east, and the great rock trolls of the far north. Shay looked at the grim visage before him and nodded slowly. Again, Elanon paused before continuing. "I am a historian, Shay, among other things, perhaps the most widely traveled historian alive today, since few besides myself have entered the Northland in over 500 years. I know much about the race of man, that none now suspect. The past has become a blurred memory, and just as well, perhaps, for the history of man has not been partially glorious in the last 2,000 years. Men today have forgotten the past. They know little of the present and less of the future. The race of man lives almost solely in the confines of the Southland. It knows nothing at all of the Northland and its peoples, and little of the Eastland and the Westland. A pity that men have developed into such a short-sighted people. For once they were the most visionary of the races, but now they are quite content to live apart from the other races, isolated from the problems of the rest of the world. They remain content, mind you, because those problems have not yet touched them, and because a fear of the past has persuaded them not to look too closely at the future. Shay felt slightly irritated by those sweeping accusations, and his reply was sharp. You make it sound like a terrible thing to want to be left alone. I know enough history. No, I know enough life to realize that man's only hope for survival is to remain apart from the races, to rebuild everything he has lost over the past 2,000 years. Then perhaps he will be smart enough not to lose it a second time. He almost destroyed himself entirely in the Great Wars by his persistent intervention in the affairs of others and his ill-conceived rejection of an isolation policy. Elanon's dark face turned hard. I am well aware of the catastrophic consequences brought about by those wars, the products of power and greed that the race of man brought down on its own head, though through a combination of carelessness and remarkable short-sightedness. That was long ago, and what has changed? You think that man can start again, do you, Shay? Well, you might be quite surprised to learn that some things never change, and the dangers of power are always present, even to a race that almost completely obliterated itself. The great wars of the past may be gone. The wars of the races, of politics and nationalism, and the final ones of sheer energy, of ultimate power. But we face new dangers today, and those are more of a threat to the existence of races than were any of the old. If you think man is free to build a new life while the rest of the world drifts by, then you do not know anything of history. He paused suddenly, his grim features lined with anger. Shay stared back defiantly, though within he felt small and frightened. Enough of this, Elanon began again, his face softening as one strong hand reached up to grip Shay's shoulder in friendship. The past is behind us, and it is with the future that we must concern ourselves. Let me refresh your memory for a moment on the history of the Northland and the legend of the Skull Kingdom. As you know, I am sure the Great Wars brought an end to an age where man alone was the dominant race. Man was almost completely destroyed, and even the geography he had known was completely altered, completely restructured. Countries, nations, and governments all ceased to exist as the last members of the human race fled south to survive. It was nearly 1,000 years before man had once again raised himself above the standard of the animals he hunted for food and established a progressive civilization. It was primitive, to be sure, but there was order and a semblance of government. Then man began to discover there were other races besides himself inhabiting the world. Creatures who had survived the Great Wars and developed their own races. In the mountains were the huge trolls, powerful and ferocious, but quite content with what they had. In the hills and forests were the small and cunning creatures we now call gnomes. Many a battle was fought between men and gnomes for the rights to land between the years following the Great Wars, and the battles hurt both races, but they fought to survive, and reason has no place in the mind of a creature fighting for its life. Man also discovered that there was another race, A race of men who had fled beneath the earth to survive the effects of the Great Wars. Years of living in the huge caverns beneath the earth's crust, away from the sunlight, altered their appearance. They became short and stocky, powerful in the arms and chest, with strong, thick legs for climbing and scrambling underground. Their sight in the dark became superior to that of other creatures. Yet in the sunlight, they could see little. They lived beneath the earth for many hundreds of years until at last they began to emerge to live again on the face of the land. Their eyes were very bad at first, and they made their homes in the darkest forests of the Eastland. They developed their own language, though they later reverted to the language of man. When man first discovered the remnants of this lost race, they called them dwarves, after a fictional race of the old days. Ugh. My voice is starting to get a little hoarse, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. Let's find somebody to raid. God, I never knew I needed Audie reading me to sleep so much till now. I only wish I wasn't still working. Holy shit. Holy heck. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. Let me see who we got. Who do we have? Who's playing something chill? Let's see who we got. Something chill or something close to Path of Exile. You know what? How about we could just raid Zoan. Zoan is still playing Path of Exile. Let me check on that real quick. Dum 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 dum. Yep. Playing some more advanced stuff in Path of Exile, but still playing Path of Exile. Oh, and Zoan's got a different model on right now, too. That's interesting. That is pretty heckin' interesting. Okay. Let's do that. But first, a question from Alu. What do you got? I'll get the raid stuff set up, though. I had read the Harry Potter books way back when, but obviously there's a lot of polarized things around that. What's another good fantasy series you recommend? Well, there's Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, I usually suggest, like, start out with The Hobbit and just go forward from there. But, like, what I started out with when I was a kid, and I just read the shit out of this whole series. There's like, I think there's like 12 books or something like that. It's the Shannara series by Terry Brooks. You know, and the book that we're reading right now is The Sword of Shannara. This is the one that I started with. This is the original first book. Now, there is a prequel to this, which is, I think, the Last King, or the something King of Shannara, or something like that. That was also very good. I have that in hardcover somewhere in this place. I don't know where. But I would definitely check that out. The whole Shannara series by Terry Brooks has been a mainstay of my childhood and got me through high school and stuff like that. And I just, like I said, I read the series over and over and over and over again. Never got old. I never read Ringworld. That's interesting. I'll have to check that out. Yeah. Definitely take a look at that. For sure. All right, let me get this raid started real quick. All right, there we go. Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it for me tonight. I think I'm going to have a little bit more to eat, and then I'm just going to get cozy in the bed and get some sleep, because I did not get a lot of sleep last night. All the Narnia books are good to read, too. Not just the ones they've made movies about. I agree. I agree. But holy heck. The next time I'm going to be live is going to be Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to have like a super chill Minecraft stream. And, but it'll be fun also. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And like, I've been really enjoying the Minecraft streams. Really, really enjoying those. But yeah, tomorrow is a rest day for me. Next time I'm streaming is Wednesday, Minecraft, 6 p.m. PST. Let's see, what else? What else? So there's not really much else. Thank you all so much for coming. This has been a really, really fun night. Really fun. And yeah, it's been great. And thank you, Paula, and thank you, Scythe, for those heckin' raids. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see y'all Wednesday. I'm running out of time. Take care, folks, and yeah, stay safe. Drink lots of water, get lots of sleep, and take care of yourselves. And I'll see you Wednesday. Take care. Bye bye.